He was talking about her coronation, which had just taken place, and he said when Satan offered Jesus a crown, if he would get down and worship him, Jesus turned him down, unlike the Queen, who accepted it from the hands of the Archbishop of Canterbury. But, he said, Jesus, nonetheless, is crowned in the heart of those who believe in him again and again, amidst, and this was the phrase that did it, confession, and I thought, yes, I can see that, tears, and then the utterly unexpected, and great laughter. And the phrase great laughter, tears shot out of my eyes. And to this day, I couldn't possibly tell you all of the reasons why. The laughter of incredulity, could it be true? This preposterous tale of God taking on human flesh and saving a world which was otherwise lost. The words, the laughter of doubt, it can't be true. Who could believe such a thing? The laughter of relief, oh my God, maybe it's true. I don't know all the things that they meant to me, but it meant to me that I had to do something about it. I was so moved. I had been so moved by other things he said, but this particularly, that I went to see him. I've written this all down. You've probably read it if you've read whatever book it was. I went to see Buechner, whom I didn't know. In those days, I'm happy to say, you didn't call your minister Jim the first time you met him. I didn't, and I wasn't looking for another friend. I had lots of friends. I was looking for a preacher, a pastor, a prophet, which he was, all of those things. And I went to see him, and I said, I've been so moved by what you've said. I think I'm going to have to do something about it. I think I'm going to have to go to seminary. And he said, well, you know, there's no need to go to seminary. He said, you can, if you want to, join this church. We have groups for people like you who are interested in... And I said, no. I said, I've got to do something more public, more dramatic than that. And then he said, all right. He said, put on your hat and coat. And he put on his hat and coat, this busy man, this great, big, busy Presbyterian church in Madison Avenue and 74th, and he drove me from that address all the way up Fifth Avenue to 108th Street across the... Was that me? Across the top of the park to Union Seminary, where he introduced me, I think, to John Knox, who was the Dean of Admissions, and I signed up to go to seminary. So when I say bad things about the church, I can never forget that if it hadn't been to the church, I would never have found what the innkeeper called my own true love. So I have tremendous gratitude, but when I go to the church now, I find it so often in the hands of mostly men who must have had some passion for Christ, for Christian truth, to get them there in the first place, but for whom it seems to have long since faded into the background, been buried under the sort of Vesuvius of all the business of running a church, you know, altar guilds and whatever people do who run churches, getting church suppers and all that. And so I'm listening to people who aren't talking any longer out of the truth of who they are. And that's why I find it not only not uplifting, but depressing. So I don't know, I'm a hopelessly religious person. I can't imagine my life without God, without my sense of Christ. But that has very little to do, I'm afraid, with what I'm fed, what I'm searching for in these buildings where I more and more rarely as the years go by attend. I hate to say that. Once in a while, there'll be an exception. You go to a church where, you know, the magic happens, where the holiness is palpable. But boy, in my experience, it's very rare. And I sense, as I'm looking out at this audience of church people mainly, that you know what I'm talking about.
Do you have any sense that it's that I understand about the bureaucratic complicatedness of a pastor's life? Do you have any sense that it is the rationality of modernity? I mean, you know, in ancient medieval days, priests had to run parishes, but it seems to me that what those parishes did was to gather around the mystery and the sacrament. And I wonder if, particularly in Protestantism, we've sort of flattened the mystery and shoved it aside to where there isn't any mystery to sustain the moral dimension and all that stuff that just wears you out like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very good. It is the mystery, especially, that's missing. I had a wonderful time when I went to Wheaton College for a semester, and then again, I think another semester later. I loved it. I was not only as a place to teach, a place to be, but in a religious sense, I was fed by these people who were believers in ways that in New England they don't come. Somebody quoted my having said once that I was amazed having lunch with two kids, two boys, and one of them said to the other, "What's God been doing in your life this week?" And I thought, if anybody asked that question, even of a believer in New England, the sky would fall. It was like sex. It was not something you talked about to other people, for God's sakes. But I remember one thing that struck me as not good about Wheaton was the church and other evangelical churches. They are very brightly lit. You know, there's no sense of sort of Gothic dusk. It's lots of wattage, and every corner is illuminated. I thought, yes, that's part of the trouble. The mystery's gone.
I heard it said recently that it is the children of liberals who are keeping the candle industry going, that the children are going back to darkness and candles and mystery and sacrament and stuff like that.
Yes, I can believe that.
Yeah.
I can believe that.
You used the word magic before.
Magic.
You said something about the magic
Yeah.
isn't there. So that's transition. Talk about your magic kingdom where you write, what that's like and how you sustain it and what that feels like.
We used to live, when we first lived in Vermont, in a little house on top of the hill we now live halfway down, and it was a wonderful place, but I am a compulsive buyer of books, not just books to read, but books as rare books, autographed books, first edition, that kind of books, and I accumulated these huge numbers. So when we moved down to what had been my wife's parents' somewhat bigger house, we added, in effect, a library. And that I named the Magic Kingdom, thinking of the Emerald City and thinking of Walt Disney. The Magic Kingdom, if you've ever been to the Walt Disney World, you'd find it down there. And I put all my treasures in it. And
You put what?
all my treasures in it. And when people occasionally ask to see it, and I take them in, and I keep, if I were taken in that room cold, I would fall on my face with adoration and astonishment and envy, because it's full of things like first editions of Alice in Wonderland and Moby Dick and all the Oz books and these unbelievable things. And it's my treasure house, and that's where in my writing days, that's where I would go every day and write, surrounded by these wonderful voices, all of which, as if for my benefit, kept still so I could write. Otherwise,
Yeah.
But that's my magic place, and I think the most magic thing that ever happened in it, in the almost literal sense of magic, was I was writing one of my many volumes of memoir. There's nothing like talking about yourself to loosen the tongue. I suddenly all but saw my beloved grandmother, whom I called Naya, sitting in a chair catty-cornered to mine, and we had, to me, an absolutely fascinating conversation about